Have you ever noticed how awakening promises freedom, clarity, and peace, but instead, one of the first things you face is an uncomfortable truth? Suddenly, you realize that the love you've been searching for in other people, in achievements, or in recognition has always been missing from the one place it matters most, inside yourself. And here's the catch. Loving yourself after awakening feels almost impossible. Why? Because when you wake up, you don't just meet your light, you meet your shadows. You meet every part of yourself you've buried, denied, or wished away. This is where most people stumble. Society tells us that self-love is bubble baths, vacations, or positive affirmations said in front of a mirror. But real self-love, the kind awakening drags you toward, is raw. It's unfiltered. It's the moment you stand face to face with your pain, your shame, and your guilt, and you're asked to love yourself anyway. It doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It doesn't wait until you've healed every wound or forgiven every mistake. True self-love demands to be chosen in the middle of your mess. And that's terrifying. Because deep down, most of us were trained to believe we're only worthy if we're successful, productive, likable, or good enough by someone else's standards. Awakening rips away that illusion. Suddenly, the voices you used to silence, the ones that say you're not enough or you're too broken, become louder. Not because you're failing, but because the masks are falling off. You're no longer able to numb yourself with busyness or distractions. You're forced to see yourself clearly. Think about it. Before awakening, you could hide behind roles: the achiever, the caregiver, the strong one, the people pleaser. But when those masks dissolve, you're left with a raw question. Who am I without all of that? And can I love that person? This is why self-love feels impossible after awakening, because it asks you to extend compassion to the very parts of yourself you were taught to reject. It asks you to look into your own eyes without flinching. It asks you to hold the inner child inside you who still believes they're unworthy and whisper, "I love you," exactly as you are. And let's be honest, it's easier to love an idea of who you want to be than to love who you actually are right now. Awakening doesn't let you escape into fantasy. It drags you back into presence and says, love this version of you, the one who's tired, confused, emotional, even broken. That's the battlefield where true self-love is born. The strange paradox of awakening is this. The more aware you become, the more sensitive you feel. You start crying more often, not because you're weak, but because your heart has been cracked open. You feel the weight of small talk, the emptiness of fake smiles, the exhaustion of keeping up appearances. And as you see through other people's masks, you also begin to notice your own. The one you've worn for decades to fit in, to be liked, to avoid rejection. Awakening peels it away, layer by layer, until you're standing there wondering, who am I without it? Am I still lovable without the costume I've been performing in my entire life? This is where self-love feels the hardest, because the world applauds your mask. It loves the version of you that hustles, entertains, provides, or sacrifices. But when you finally strip that away, when you meet the unfiltered version of yourself, the voice of doubt gets louder. Am I enough without achievements? Am I worthy if I'm vulnerable? Will anyone stay if I stop pretending? These questions echo inside you, and most people mistake them as proof they're broken. But the truth is the opposite. That doubt is the proof you're waking up. Here's why. Self-love isn't about adding something to yourself. It's about subtracting all the lies you believed about why you weren't enough. Every tear you cry, every uncomfortable silence you sit through, every mask you shed, these aren't failures. They're signs that you're finally meeting the parts of yourself you've been running from your whole life. And let's be honest, those parts don't look enlightened. They look messy. They look angry. They look ashamed. They look like the little kid inside you who never got the love, the safety, or the validation they deserved. Awakening throws you into this confrontation without asking for your permission. It places you in front of your shadow and whispers, "Now love this." And of course it feels impossible at first, because for years you've been taught to hate these parts of yourself, to bury them, to call them weaknesses. But awakening refuses to let you keep abandoning yourself. It drags your wounds to the surface not to punish you, but to show you where love has been missing. So if you felt raw, exposed, or even ashamed during your awakening, understand this. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're in the middle of the real work. Awakening isn't about always feeling blissful or radiant. It's about standing in front of your own darkness and learning how to hold yourself there without running away. It's about discovering that the truest form of self-love is born not when you feel perfect, but when you feel unworthy and choose to love yourself anyway. One of the biggest illusions that makes self-love feel impossible is the belief that you have to earn it. We've been programmed since childhood to believe that love is conditional. You get praised when you behave, when you perform, when you succeed. You get ignored or criticized when you fail, when you're messy, when you show emotions others don't want to see. Without even realizing it, you internalize this deal. I am lovable only when I'm good enough. So naturally, when awakening strips away your roles and achievements, you feel terrified, because suddenly you have nothing left to bargain with. But here's the truth nobody teaches you. You don't become worthy by fixing yourself. You already are worthy, right now, even in your most broken state, even in your lowest moment, even when you feel like you failed at everything. The worthiness was never lost, it was only buried under layers of shame and doubt. Awakening brings those layers to the surface, not to prove you're unlovable, but to show you exactly where you've been withholding your own love. Think about your pain for a moment, your sadness, your loneliness, your anger. Most people treat these feelings like enemies. They run from them, numb them, criticize themselves for having them. But what if your pain isn't trying to destroy you? What if it's trying to guide you? Every painful emotion is a messenger pointing toward the parts of you that feel unloved. Your sadness says, see me, hold me. Your anger says, protect me, stop abandoning me. Your loneliness says, I need your presence. When you sit with these feelings instead of running away, you give them what they've been begging for all along, your attention. And attention is love. This is why presence is the real foundation of self-love. You don't need the perfect affirmation, the perfect routine, or the perfect body to finally deserve your own love. What you need is presence, being with yourself as you are without judgment. To place your hand on your heart when you feel broken and whisper, I'm here, I'm not leaving. That's what your inner child, your wounded self, has needed to hear all along. The moment you stop waiting for worthiness and start giving yourself love unconditionally, something extraordinary happens. The pain doesn't vanish overnight, but it softens. The anger doesn't disappear immediately, but it transforms into clarity. The loneliness doesn't suffocate you, because now you are with yourself in it. And slowly, you realize the impossible task of self-love was never about becoming lovable. It was about remembering that you already are. The deeper you go into awakening, the more you notice something startling. The voice in your head isn't even yours. The harsh critic that tells you you're not doing enough, not healing fast enough, not spiritual enough, it's an echo. It belongs to parents who wanted you to be perfect, teachers who demanded performance, partners who withheld love until you met their expectations. Over the years, you swallowed those judgments and carried them as if they were your own thoughts. But awakening shines a light on them. Suddenly, you can hear the difference between your soul's voice and the borrowed noise of your past. And yet, even with this awareness, loving yourself isn't easy. Because the inner critic doesn't go quietly. It whispers that if you don't punish yourself, you'll get lazy. That if you don't push harder, you'll fall behind. That if you stop striving, you'll be worthless. This is the lie that keeps self-love feeling impossible. The belief that shame is necessary to grow. But the truth is the opposite. Shame doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller. Fear doesn't make you disciplined. It makes you disconnected. The only force that truly heals and transforms is love. Imagine if you spoke to yourself the way you would to a child you adored. If, instead of saying, "You're failing again," you said, "It's okay, you're learning, and I'm proud of you for trying." If, instead of saying, "You should be further along by now," you said, "Every step counts, and I won't abandon you for moving slowly." What would happen to your heart if your inner dialogue softened like that? What kind of life would you live if you became your own encourager instead of your harshest judge? This is also where boundaries enter the picture. Most people think of boundaries as pushing people away. But in reality, boundaries are one of the purest expressions of self-love. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you are saying yes to yourself. Every time you walk away from someone who disrespects you, you are affirming, "I will not abandon myself just to keep someone else comfortable." That is not selfish, it is sacred. The irony is, when you finally start protecting your energy, guilt often comes first. Society conditions you to believe that self-sacrifice is noble, while self-respect is selfish. But the moment you choose peace over people-pleasing, you begin to experience freedom. You start realizing that love without boundaries isn't really love, it's fear. And choosing fear has never healed anyone. So the next time your inner critic rises or guilt tells you you're being too much, pause and ask yourself, am I listening to truth, or am I listening to old voices that never belonged to me? Awakening invites you to take your voice back, to silence the noise, and to finally speak to yourself with kindness. That shift, simple as it seems, is one of the most radical acts of love you will ever commit. Here's a truth that surprises many on the path. Self-love is not a single breakthrough moment. It isn't one meditation that erases years of doubt, or one journal entry that heals decades of shame. Self-love is a practice, an ongoing relationship you build with yourself, brick by brick, moment by moment. And like any relationship, it thrives on consistency, not perfection. Think of the small things you do every day: drinking water when you're thirsty, resting when you're tired, letting yourself cry instead of forcing a smile, turning off your phone and just breathing in silence. These may not look spiritual on the surface, but they are the rituals through which you retrain your nervous system to feel safe with itself. Every gentle choice tells your body and mind, "I will not abandon you anymore." And that repeated message, delivered in dozens of small ways, is how love begins to root deeply. But here's the catch. The ego will try to dismiss these practices. It will whisper, "This isn't enough. You should be doing more." Real spiritual people meditate for hours, fast for days, push themselves harder. That's the trap. Awakening is not about becoming superhuman. It's about remembering how to be fully human, with tenderness. Self-love grows not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, ordinary moments where you choose kindness over criticism, patience over pressure, presence over performance. Imagine what would shift if, instead of chasing some ideal version of yourself, you honored the version that exists right now. If you woke up tomorrow and said, "I may not have it all figured out, but I am worthy of care today, exactly as I am." That's not laziness, that's liberation. Because when you give yourself permission to be imperfect and still deserving of love, you step out of the endless race for worthiness and into a place of peace. Another overlooked piece of self-love is play. We forget how healing it is to laugh, to move, to be creative for no reason other than joy. As children, we loved naturally. We danced without shame, sang off-key without judgment, expressed emotions without hesitation. Then the world taught us to suppress, to perform, to be acceptable. Returning to self-love means reclaiming that innocence, not in a childish way, but in a divine way. Every time you let yourself play, every time you delight in simple joys, you are saying yes to life and yes to yourself. Self-love is not about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up for yourself daily,
Even when it feels hard, even when it feels silly, even when you don't think you deserve it. Because in those moments, the practice becomes the proof. You are worthy, not someday, not when you've healed more, not when you've achieved more, but right now.
So ask yourself, what small act of love can you give yourself today? A glass of water? 10 minutes of silence? Writing down one thing you're proud of? Don't underestimate it. These tiny acts of devotion are how your soul learns to trust you again. And when trust returns, love deepens. The deeper you go on this journey, the more you realize something that changes everything. Self-love is not something you earn, achieve, or build from scratch. You don't need to manufacture love for yourself as if it's an award you win after years of spiritual hard work. The truth is far simpler, yet far more radical. You don't need to become love. You already are love. Think back to when you were a child. Before you learned to hide your tears, before you were told to tone down your laughter, before you were taught that love had to be earned by pleasing others, you loved naturally. You expressed yourself without hesitation. You danced when you felt like moving. You cried when something hurt. You forgave quickly, laughed easily, and existed without shame. That was love in its purest form, unfiltered presence with yourself and with life. You didn't become love then, you simply were love. Over the years, conditioning layered over that truth. Society taught you that worth comes from performance, that love must be traded for approval, that you had to earn your place in the world by fitting into someone else's mold. Slowly, you began to forget. And now, when awakening strips away the masks, it doesn't give you something new. It hands back what was always yours. It reminds you that you never lost love, you only lost touch with it. This remembering can feel disorienting, because the ego thrives on effort. It whispers, you must fix yourself before you're lovable. You must achieve more before you're worthy. You must heal every wound before you can rest. But awakening invites you into the opposite. It says, rest first. Love yourself first. Heal not because you're broken, but because you're worthy of gentleness even in your messiness. That shift flips everything upside down. When you realize you already are love, the urgency softens. You stop waiting for the perfect version of yourself to appear before you can feel peace. You stop measuring your worth by how enlightened or positive you seem. You understand that even in your darkest moments, even when you're angry, tired, doubtful, love is the ground you are standing on. It doesn't leave, it doesn't diminish. It simply waits for you to remember. This is why every small act of kindness toward yourself feels so powerful. You're not adding something foreign. You're uncovering what's always been there. It's like clearing dust from a mirror. The reflection was always shining, but now you can finally see it again. And here's the paradox. The more you stop chasing love as something external, the more naturally it flows through you. The moment you stop striving to become lovable, you realize you've been love itself all along. When you finally stop searching outside and turn inward, you realize something life-changing. The journey of awakening was never about becoming someone new. It was always about coming home to yourself. The tears you've shed, the shadows you've faced, the silence you've sat through, they were never signs of failure. They were doorways. Each breakdown, each wave of loneliness, each doubt was carving away what was false so the truth could emerge. And the truth is this: you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unworthy. You are love itself, learning how to remember. Every time you forgive yourself, every time you choose compassion over judgment, every time you let yourself feel instead of run, you are rewriting the story of your life. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer chasing a love that was never gone. This is the power of self-love after awakening. It doesn't mean you'll never stumble. It doesn't mean you'll never hear that harsh inner critic again. But it does mean that when it comes, you'll know how to respond. With patience, with gentleness, with presence. That's what real freedom feels like. Not a life without pain, but a life where even pain is held in love. So here is my invitation for you right now. Pause, place your hand on your heart, and whisper the words you've always needed to hear. Say, I love you. I'm not leaving you. No matter what, I'm here. Let that truth sink in. Let it echo in your bones. Because when you learn to love yourself this way, nothing in the world can take it from you. And if this message touched you, share your story. Tell us in the comments how you are learning to love yourself through awakening, because your voice may be the reminder someone else desperately needs tonight. And if you want to keep walking this path together, subscribe, because what comes next will take you even deeper into the mysteries of awakening and the love that has been within you all along.